Hello there, Michael Myrdad here. Blessings to you all. This is one of our Friday night spiritual insights with Michael Myrdad presentations. So thanks for joining us. And today we're going to focus on something I'm sort of surprised that we haven't talked about it that much, and certainly haven't done a presentation only on this topic, at least not that I recall. But I'm surprised we haven't done it sooner because so many of you folks have, in counseling sessions or in emails, told me about your difficulties with, drumroll please, narcissistic people. So let's talk about narcissism and so forth, okay? To begin with, it's not just you that I'm referring to. I mean, there are a lot of people that ask this question. The talk is out there, people wondering, narcissism, what is it? And pretty soon what happens is you start finding people loosely using terms like this as though they know what it means. And what happens is we make a quick identification. Narcissism, like it's synonymous with vanity and selfishness. And it sort of is. It depends on who you're listening to or what reference to narcissism. So as usual, let's go deep into this. Really, really nice, man. Let's cover this on a deep level, a level that most people can't or don't. And yet, I like, it to be clear and simple. So it's understandable, practical, applicable as much as possible. But really, most people, again, like I was saying, don't really know the term. And so they say narcissism because in pop psychology, there are things like, the Oedipus complex or narcissism. They use terms that come from Greek mythology. So whether it's a male or female character, whether it's a group of people or whatever the case may be, we go to Greek mythology. They did that because of the common Latin terms for medical organs, physiology, and so on. So they went back to Latin again, except Greek, and make reference. And also because Greek mythology captures not only deep spiritual insights, but archetypes of people. It's archetypes. Sometimes those people actually existed, including gods and goddesses and demigods and so on. Not that the world of academia would want to believe that or acknowledge that, but it's true. A lot of those things did exist. Some were written as archetypes. So some things happened, some didn't, but they were, mythologized, made to be a learning tool, paradoxes or rather parables and storytelling, so that people could still learn. So at this point, in our day and age, we hear terms that sometimes fit and sometimes don't. So psychology says, okay, we're going to use the narcissism as a reference, as a label, as a diagnosis, as what you might say, personality disorder. So we're going to use narcissism. And yet, the idea is it's almost like a person that is so hyper selfish they can be harmful to others. That's true. And yet there are mild versions too that are just people that just can't stop talking about themselves. So, we'll kind of cover that as best we can. The mythology is like, well, Narcissus is somebody who was so vain that he was in love with himself. And one day he looks into a pond. He will not love anybody but himself. He's just so vain. Wow, am I not the coolest? And looks into a pond and says, wow, I am hotter than I even imagined, because he could see his reflection, and then falls in love and then gets so engrossed with his beauty, he falls into the pond and drowns. That is like not at all the story of Narcissus. It's not at all. I mean, it has like an ounce of similarity to the real story, but it's really not it at all. So it's not really an accurate portrayal, but people will use that just kind of a really gross summary. So the truth is, Narcissus was a very attractive boy. And there's little details I can't go into right now, but like, his mother is just like, wow, this child's so beautiful. Takes him to a seer, a clairvoyant, a prophet, what can you tell me about my son? And so there's just that story in itself, that little part of the story gets really kind of cool and deep, but let's stay out of that. Just the bottom line is he's a beautiful boy. And, everybody he meets loves him. They just think he's the greatest. He's beautiful. There's a countenance about him, an energy, sweet, clear, an integrity and so on. And so everybody that meets him falls in love with him. But also all the maidens in the area, they're just like, just gaga, like, wow, like a deep, shocking level of awe, like just of falling in love. But he couldn't find. He knew there was a deeper love. He knew there was something more than a romantic version of love. So he couldn't let himself fall in love, which of course upsets all the gals in the region. But he couldn't. So now, of course, what happens is, and I don't mean to be gross about this, but you remember the old story in the 70s especially, there was the old, like, comedians would talk about this, where if some guys went, wow, look at that girl, hey man, how you doing? And she ignores them, the only way they could save face was to go, oh, she must be a lesbian, because that was their way of saying, otherwise she would be into me, which is really kind of ridiculous. But that's the kind of little commentary people made in those days. It's kind of like that. People are looking at Narcissus and he's not reciprocating. And, so they get all upset, they get hurt, get angry, pass rumors and all that stuff that kind of happens, right, in this world. So one day he loved taking walks in the woods. And one day he's walking in the woods and yes, he does come upon a pond. But before he does, he hears there's a woman, like all the women, they fall in love with him. And there's a woman that falls in love with him. She's like, oh my God. And he could sense her presence, couldn't see her. And then he could hear a voice every so often. So it's like, wow, who is that? And then she'll go, that. He could just hear, like, almost faintly, who is that? And then he would say, are you there? And he would hear, there. So he could just hear this slight words of her trying to speak to him. And what turns out to have happened is this poor girl, she was sweet, beautiful as well, somebody he probably would have fallen in love with. And just her presence, and he was seemingly like starting to really like who's this beautiful presence and who is she? So potentially he could have found love. But she had been cursed as well. Now, she had been cursed by a jealous goddess who assumed that her god husband was fooling around with, which hadn't happened, but she thought so. So she cursed this young girl, and said, you will not be able to be seen, especially heard. You're not going to be seen. You're cursed to kind of be almost like a shadow out there. And except anybody that can hear you, the only words that people can perceive, or anything to be able to perceive about you, is they'll hear like your last word or words of any sentence, but you're only allowed to repeat the ones they said. So if they said, who are you? And she would say, you. So it gets kind of sad, but kind of cool, because in some ways she's reflecting words to us, but it's sad because she can't be who she is. She can only be like a reflection of others. And her name was Echo, which is where we get the word echo. Echo, echo. So that's her. He would say, where are you? You. And who are you? You, and things like that. So it's really kind of cool. And the goddess that put the curse on him, limiting his abilities, because what happens is he finally gives up on this situation with meeting Echo, and he's like frustrated. But then all of a sudden he goes into a pond and sees his reflection, and it all dawns on him, and he's like, oh my God, I see it. It's beauty. And it's funny because the world teaches us we can't love ourselves and we can't see good in ourselves, or else we are narcissistic. So it's a twist on things because he did righteously see his beauty, accurately see his beauty. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not that commonly accepted here, is it? So he sees his beauty, and one goddess that's, out to get him says, look at him, he's falling in love with himself, he's enamored with himself, so she adds another curse, and so in that moment he starts to feel the pain of all the women in the world, or all the women that had met him. He starts to feel the pain of what they felt when they did not get reciprocated the love they felt. They felt hurt and sad and whatever, lonely, abandoned, or whatever. So he was fated in that moment to feel all the pain that you would say he caused, but he didn't cause it, but that came as a secondary or whatever effect of this incident. So he just falls in such deep pain, he dies. And the maidens who had fallen in love with him in the region heard about this, so they ran out because they realized, you know what? It wasn't his fault. He's beautiful, and we loved him, righteously so. We should love love. We should love beauty and love love. So let's go and bury his body and give him what he deserves. So they're going to go out and do this, but they don't find the body. They just find where he was lying, a pile of flowers, growing in his place. And these became a flower known as the Narcissus flower. So that's what happened. It's kind of interesting, but the mean, bad goddess, so to speak, that cursed him in that moment, her name was Nemesis, and we know what that word means. So Greek mythology, these terminologies, Narcissus and the flower, and the term, the name Echo, where that came from, and all these deep metaphysical meanings. And it would be great if someone would present that kind of material in such a deep metaphysical, spiritual kind of a fashion. You only get bits of it here and there, sometimes way cerebral, sometimes way inaccurate one way or another historically or whatever. So, you can't do much more with it. And I think I said once that I might do an online course where we can just focus on this sort of thing for a few weeks. But, I don't know, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but, we'll see. It's at least, out there as an idea. So we start understanding that technically you could say narcissism is a personality disorder, and personality disorders are usually rated, at least in modern psychology or sciences of the mind, to be incurable. So it's something people think you can't even really take medicine for it. But it's a personality disorder, so you're stuck with it. It's going to be challenging. It's going to likely affect your life and the life of people around you, whether it's borderline personality or narcissism. It's things like that. You're just going to end up struggling. So, and also, I don't know that this is out there in science, in studies, but I will say it's acceptable to say that more men tend to be narcissistic than women, even though both can be narcissistic. Men and women can both, but I think it's more common to be seen or assumed and presumed to be in men. So it's just a little side thought. But for example, I know like the old traditional, the mother, the narcissistic mother. And you think, well, aren't moms nice, Donna Reed and, the old traditional nice, sweet mom, or Mrs. Cunningham, Happy Days, to bring it more to modern terminologies, even though that's 40 years ago. No, there's also the syndrome of the mom. Like one I know who the daughter announces to the mom and dad, guess what? That moment, I'm getting married. And you, oh, honey, our stereotype would be of the mommy, the healthy mom would be, oh my God, that's beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so lucky, and he's lucky. It'd be great, but it didn't go that way. In this case, the mom bursts out I can't believe it. You're only getting married so that your father won't have enough money to remodel the kitchen, my kitchen that I wanted remodeled. Now imagine not only the hurt in that girl, but just think about how blatantly selfish that was. And you can hear that concept of narcissism, which shouldn't be tied in with mythology because that's inappropriately done, inaccurately done, but you could hear the intense selfishness about that. Really, because that's likely what your daughter was doing. She probably didn't even like the guy and want to get married. She just thought, how could I screw up my mother's chances of getting her kitchen redone? I know, I'll get married and do something like that, like a big decision of life just to mess up my mother, mess up my mom's plans. But that's how a narcissist could think, because it's like they're so inflated with self-importance. They could think that somebody would go that far into plotting to ruin them because they're that important. They're that important or present in people's lives. They're just such a presence. So anyway, narcissism, you could say, manifests in two general forms: aggressive narcissists and more passive narcissists. Aggressive, it's like those who would insist on attention, like rage if they don't get it. That starts to almost overlap to the reaction of a borderline or a psychopath, like just boom, like it really can hit. But we cannot assume and should not assume that all narcissists are like that. There's some narcissists that just could sit so sweet and they may not get what they want, but they're just kind of more casual about it, and they'll just come up with something else to say about themselves. So one would get all reactive, not necessarily overtly say, how dare you deny me of this thing I want. It wouldn't necessarily be that obvious, although it could be. But they would get enraged, and you realize, wow, when that person realizes, it comes to accept to some level that what's happening is that they're not the center of everybody's world, they're going to just trip out. And that's the arrogance of a lot of celebrities. And by celebrity, I mean even celebrity level athletes. Just we're in the limelight. Everything revolves around us, and so on. So that's kind of how that goes. But the passive one is just going to be more like almost like an only child syndrome. I'm what matters. So I need to pull every conversation to me. So somebody says, yeah, I just got back from a trip. Oh, I was on a trip last week. I'm thinking of getting married. Oh, I've been married, 5 times. Yeah, God, I got to go to the dentist today. Oh, I was just there last month. It no matter what, it's like every conversation. You could just say something abstract. God, I almost hit a dog today. And, oh, I had a wonderful dog. Did I tell you about the dog I had? And it just, it's probably why the dog ran away. Because it just, everybody kind of gets tired of hearing I, me, mine. That's how their brain works. It could be that they were an only child, or it could be that they have past lives as a king or queen, because it is very common to be it's called entitled. Entitlement is a major, let's call it, symptom of narcissism. It's just like, I'm all that matters. So that's kind of what that's about. Narcissism can seem like a blend of other disorders. I mean, it really can be hard to pin these things down. And I'm not telling you to pin these things down. I'm not asking you to start going down a list in your mind of people narcissism, psychopath. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying, if we're going to do the topic, then we have to address a good breadth of things and the depth as well. So understand that it's hard to sometimes say that something's just a narcissist. I've heard people say, oh, my ex was a borderline personality. They had borderline personality disorder. And really, when they tell me about the person, I go, that's actually a narcissist. Or sometimes, wow, that's actually a psychopath. There's just things that you can feel, but none of those are solid, because these are all human perceptions. You can't say that, there's two trees growing out in your yard, and they're looking independent, but one's branches are over there and one's branches are so which one has the most branches in which other plant's space? It like they overlap and there's air in between. It's really not something you can say cut and dry. It's kind of like that. We're talking about energies and auric kinds of things, energetic things, psychological things, emotional things, the emotional body, the energy body, and so on. So it really overlaps. So it's hard to say something is just one thing. Not to mention chemical disorders, chemical imbalances, bipolar disorder, depression, and so on. So these things can all overlap, but narcissism can have symptoms or characteristics of psychopathy or histrionic. Histrionic is like, oh my God, everything is dramatic. Everything is just like, it just like so blown out of proportion, which is kind of like a narcissist who starts blowing things out of proportion because things aren't about them, or the psychopath who flips because of their own reasons for, I want what I want. So it all kind of overlaps. So, narcissism also overlaps with borderline personality and so on. So characteristics. Each symptom or characteristic that I share here of narcissism, each one of these, I'll share, maybe like a dozen, but each one of these in itself could be challenging to be with a person with any one of these things. So imagine that a narcissist has all of these things. I don't know, if you read a book or go online, you're probably going to see, 5 signs of 20 signs of borderlines or of narcissists or whatever, whatever. When you overlap them, they're probably going to all generally agree with some variations. There's going to be some clinical people out there that wouldn't agree with what I would give you as a list, but I think you're going to find that it's likely correct or probably agrees with most specialists out there. And I'm not claiming to be one. I'm an intuitive. I'm a spiritual counselor, a spiritual healer, a spiritual teacher. So mine comes from another place. But I believe that it's a place that's maybe sometimes clearer than the mental mumbo jumbo that goes on. But the most common symptom, maybe characteristic, is self-absorbed. I mean, everything's about them. That's a narcissist. But that doesn't imply that they're mean or that they're this or that. It's just self-absorbed. So you could say a lot of people can seem self-absorbed. That's okay, fine. Does that make them a narcissist? Not necessarily. But beyond self-absorbed, there starts to get the vanity. How do I look? How do I look? How do I look? How do I look? Constantly. And it's almost like there's a subconscious competitiveness. If they walk by a mirror, they can't walk by a mirror without, catching a glimpse. Remember the song "You're So Vain," Carly Simon? And I don't need you guys to start posting who that was about, but I think most people know the story. It was about a very vain, conceited narcissist actor, but we don't know if he's clinical. We just know that he was considered vain. And in the song, she's kind of saying, you can't walk by a mirror without, getting a little glimpse of yourself. But, that can be conceit. Doesn't have to be narcissism. Could just be a little conceited, a little vain. But narcissism, again, would have a list of characteristics, not just vanity and not just self-absorbed. Then, you start to get a little dangerous because you start to go into like superiority. Now it's not just, I'm kind of conceited. Now I'm feeling superior, which means you're inferior. So when I think and speak to others, if I'm a narcissist, you are automatically lesser. So really you're just here to do my bidding, which brings us back to, gosh, it sounds like some lifetime of some, you could think royalty, could be. Could also just be a slave owner, believe it or not. Doesn't mean they have always some wonderful, velvety kind of robes and crowns and, because some royalty was gross and vain and some were nice and wonderful. But if somebody's a narcissist and you see signs of potential like entitlement and I'm superior, and how dare you question me because I know everything. And it's not even just who knows more. It's the very idea that you would even speak when I'm in the room. That's how far it can go sometimes. It may not always look that way because they have to cover it up, but that's kind of how it is. And that's not just royalty, although it could be. That could be somebody who's higher up in the church. It could be a slave owner. It could even just be a tyrannical household, leader of a household, head of a household, a mom or dad or whatever. I think we're on let's go the fourth thing, let's go with, kind of they start to overlap the things I'm naming, but demanding attention. That's again, self-absorbed. It's a little bit of superiority, but it's sort of its own thing, demanding attention. And that starts to get to be almost like the spoiled child or the only child syndrome, where all the attention's on me and I can't even imagine why you would be putting any attention on anybody else. Another one, and again these overlap, is like grandiosity. It's a term used in A Course in Miracles here and there because it talks about how the ego is filled with grandiosity, not greatness. But grandiosity, as it's used here, is more like you think you're great. And not only that, grandiosity is like inflated greatness. Like you just you think, any day now I'm getting a raise. Any day now I'm going to be promoted to president of this corporation. Any day I'm going to, I'll probably be, before I die, I'll probably be a billionaire. I'm fated to be loved by everybody. Everybody knows that I'm right about everything. Even if you're brilliant and you are right about things, that's great. But when you walk around with that, plus you think you're superior, plus you're vain, plus, then it starts to become, you could call it, clinical. Narcissists can be psychic vampires, just sucking the air out of a room or energy from people. But they can suck energy out of a room. A borderline can do that sometimes. My identity is all based on what you think of me, so I'm going to suck the air out of the room and just pull everything from you. I need to pull your energy from you. And if you don't give it, I'm going to rage. And then I'm going to probably cry and say, oh, I'm so sorry, don't leave me. So it's these extreme, almost bipolar kinds of things in a borderline. But in narcissistic and psychic vampires. But that leads me, the last part of what I just said reminds me there's a narcissist, they know how to play the victim card. So after all I've done for you, when just being all puffed up doesn't do it, then it's going to be, oh, okay, fine. After all I've done for you, I can't even believe that you're doing this to me, and that sort of thing. That you go, well, that doesn't sound real prideful and narcissistic. No, it's passive aggressive, but that's a little bit more the passive side of the narcissist. I've already said entitled, but I just want to make sure we drive that home. Entitlement, self-inflated, yeah, but entitlement, getting upset when things don't go their way, and or not just when things don't go their way. It's even, there's a subtle thing in this one. It's when things are not perfect by my standards. So the narcissistic parent can come home. It might be other characteristics of theirs, like stress, but it could be narcissism when they come home and they see one hand towel is out of place. The dinner is set for them. It has to be because they're the king or queen. But you forgot to put a spoon next to their plate. That's how weird it can get. And again, it's not just perfect. It's not OCD and so on. This is, how dare you? See, in OCD, it's, bite the nails and where's the spoon? It's not in its place. In narcissism, it's like, how dare you disrespect me and not have that spoon in place? Leads us to another one. There's a little bit of thunder going on outside, you can maybe hear. So another characteristic, the control freak. A narcissist is typically going to be a control freak, wanting everything perfect, everything in place. But also, and that one is a blend of the I want everything in place perfectionism, but it's also, mixed with entitlement and superiority and so on. Lacking boundaries is a huge. Actually, let me say first, lacking responsibility. A narcissist isn't typically going to say, "Gosh, God, I blew that, didn't I? I'm really sorry about that." That's not usually going to happen. Why would they? It's the king or queen. They can do what they want. They can say, "We are superior," and it's going to all just be okay. And if you have a problem with it, it's your problem. I think it's nice for us all to learn to say, "My bad," or "Oops," or "Sorry." I think it's really kind of cool. I found myself learning to say "Oops," "Sorry," or whatever quite often, even if I've not done something, because in saying that, it helps sort of disarm people that are reared up in some way. So, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it does if you're really hyper egotistical, but there's nothing wrong. The greatest, the smallest of us, as we perceive ourselves to be, it doesn't matter. The youngest child, the oldest child, sorry about that. It's okay for a parent to say to the kids too, "Oh, you know what? Sorry about that." Just because they're the parents doesn't mean they're beyond something like that. It's beautiful, it's honest, and it's humbling. It's humility. So, lacking responsibility, but God, lacking boundaries. The narcissist doesn't even believe you have the right to have boundaries. They may not say that, but this is the thinking. They will not honor yours, but heaven help you if you don't honor their boundaries. And they don't have boundaries. What they have are very stringent needs, demands. You will do this, period. And then you can say, "Well, can I have such and such?" What? Like, why would you even think you can ask? That's how severe that can be. The narcissist also lacks empathy, or the ability to understand why you're upset. If they've hurt you, they really don't get it because they're so self-absorbed. Again, their energy's all here. So they look out of this package that is them, all wrapped up in itself, and they look outside that package at you and wonder, "You barely even exist. Why are you having emotions without my giving you permission to have emotions, or without my believing that you even should have those emotions? So go ahead and explain them to me." But no, because I'm not actually even interested in why you're having emotions. That's how crazy that could all be. So, and I know that as I'm sharing these things, listeners, viewers here can go, check, to people that you might have struggled with. And I'm really sorry, because it's not easy. Dealing with people with personality disorders, which can be us too watching. It's okay. If it's us too in some ways. And they say it's incurable. That's not true, actually. Anything is curable, but not all things in this life, and not all things in this minute. Some things take a little more time. Sometimes a personality disorder, you say, "Well, how do I heal it?" It's not going to be through meds, and they'll say there's no meds for it. Well, fine, you don't need meds for it, apparently, because it doesn't work for it. But you could say that, if I do have a personality disorder, what do I do with it? Is that it? I'm just up creek, and I'm fated to that. You could look at it as just being a labeled challenge that you have to work on. I mean, whether your challenge is having a mild allergy or a major personality disorder, in God they're all the same. They're the children of God, believing that they can be flawed in some way. How flawed doesn't really matter. Personality disorder, whoa, that's majorly flawed. No, it's all the same. And I'll come back and talk about that in just a sec. But, they lack empathy. Let's just finish up this list. And I think I've knocked off, pretty much everything. I'm going to add one more, which is narcissists tend to be tense and anxious a lot. Because, after all, the poor darlings, they have to keep looking around. Is everything going my way? Is everybody looking at me? So that's causes a lot of anxiety, doesn't it? You can strain your neck having to look around and see if everybody's staring like you want them to. But it also causes the people around them to be quite tense and anxious, because you never know when they're going to blow. Again, similar to other disorders, but it's quite stressful and causes a lot of anxiousness, anxiety. So it could be that my grades were never good enough. And there's actually stories of especially males in this case, male narcissists whose wives have children. They might have had a decent relationship up to that point, but it is not uncommon for the wife to have a child and then the husband pulls away. There's other reasons that happens sometimes, but narcissism is one of them. And they pull away. Why do they pull away? And technically because you've just triggered many of those characteristics. How can you love something other than me? You're giving attention to my child, your child. That's no big deal. It's just a baby. I mean, they can actually have those thoughts even if they don't always say them. So if you've ever noticed your parent or a parent starts to become more distant, it could be kind of scary because you can't say, oh, honey, I noticed you've been distanced lately. Maybe you're a narcissist. And they're going to go, God, how did I miss that? It's not usually going to go well. So you have to figure out how you're going to navigate that, I guess. So let's go into that for a moment. How do you navigate that? What do we do if we have a narcissist in our life, or that's a significant part of our life? Could be our boss, could be a family member like a brother or sister, it could be a parent, your partner, could be your child. But what are we going to do? And what we're going to do depends a little bit. You can't just say, well, you do this, because what you would do with a distant friend would be very different than a live-in partner, obviously. But in general, I would start with saying this: practice love and forgiveness. Be patient. Maybe you have to be practicing love and forgiveness from a distance, but don't forget patience, compassion, love, forgiveness. Okay, number 1. 2, practice self-observation. Like, why is this in my life? See, a narcissist is not typically aware of their inner self. They only feel suspicious that something's not right. They don't want to think it's them. Must be you. You must be up to something. So, snap the whip and blame and accuse. So they lack responsibility. So one thing you can do is just practice self-observation. First of all, to make sure you're not a narcissist yourself, but they're self-absorbed. Spiritual people are self-aware. So the more you develop spiritual or self-awareness, the more you're becoming healthier. You'll not only not be so much a narcissist if there's any characteristics in you, but you'll also attract them less often, believe it or not. Also, you want to show a narcissist that you are not there to be their slave. That you don't have to yell that, but I'm saying you show just a place of center inside, a place of I'm here. I'm actually here. See, they don't want people that are there. They want people that lack self-worth. The narcissist and other types of personality disorders, they thrive on people not knowing who they are. So the more you hold center, have self-awareness, and show that you're kind of, you have backbone, that's kind of you're not a wimp, you have backbone. That's kind of a nice immunity to this kind of a relationship or interaction. Depending on the relationship with them, you can suggest they get help. If they say no, if they say yes, great. If they say no, now it's going to be difficult for a narcissist to say, I think I need help, because that means I'm not the center of the universe. I need some help from outside, from someone else that might know more than me. That's impossible, and so on and so on. So suggest that they get help. You and I know that doesn't always go well with somebody that's in any way out of control, addictions or whatever else, but it happens. Remember, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries is the next item. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Set boundaries. Hold your boundaries. let them have their boundaries. When they don't want to have boundaries, remind them your space ends right over there, so you might have to remind them of their boundaries. Next, find a good support group. Especially if it's somebody close to you, and that hurts, family member, partner, whatever. Get a good support group, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it it's almost like a breath of fresh air. It's like a voice of sanity on the other end of that line. Man, here's what's going on. It's like there's, special groups and books for people in relationship with people with borderline personality. It's like walking on eggshells. There's a book along that sort of a name for that sort of relationship. Borderline, walking on eggshells, or something like that, I think it was. Written maybe back in the 80s or 90s. So once again, find a good support group. And by the way, being in a relationship with a narcissist is pretty much synonymous with an extreme version of a codependent relationship. So if you can't find Narcissist Anonymous, you might be looking at just, codependent groups. That would be, more than adequate, and maybe read a little bit about it and so on. Now, and keep in mind, we're talking about how to deal with others. We still have to talk about what if we have some of those characteristics, and we got to be honest about that. Next, do your best to take responsibility. This is important because, this is boundaries again, but specific. Don't take responsibility for their feelings. You've hurt me. You're. I can't believe you told me I need a counselor, or you're the one who didn't have the spoon next to the bowl where I wanted it, and you just don't care. And that's kind of bothering me, but I'm not going to take responsibility for their feelings. That's very important. And then, but do take responsibility for your own. If you get enraged, if you get hurt, watch that. Why is that happening? Because if I can clean up my own bits of Velcro that they can stick to, their comments stick to, and I remove that Velcro inside of me, my own low self-worth, self-doubt kinds of things, they're going to go after that. These people with personality disorders, they know how to spot what they're looking for, which is someone who feels a slight inadequacy, and they're just going to head for that. That's just, you're doomed, so watch out. Next, be aware of no-win scenarios. This is true for any kind of codependent relationship. But in this dealing with narcissists, please watch out for how they put you in no-win scenarios, because that's a setup. It's kind of like if you love me, you'll put that spoon exactly where I want it on the table. Okay, but wait, how do I argue that? I can say, no, that has nothing to do with it, and they're not going to accept that. You can say, okay, fine, then I'll make sure it's there, but you might forget someday, confirming their accusation. I'm just using a really simplistic kind of example, but it's a no-win situation. So you got to watch. In any codependent relationship, you've got to watch, because it's easy to fall into the trap of enabling the behavior of people with personality disorders. And then you're going to be afraid of pulling out of that pattern. Once they put you in a box, I expect you to be a certain way, and they no-win situations, and you start to get pushed and pulled by them. You've become kind of a psychic or emotional slave to them. It's going to be hard to pull out of that. And they will work you over for it. They're not going to let you just kind of slip out of that spot. It could be if your mom or your dad, has that narcissism. There can be things like, well, I'm going to pull your name out of our will. I'm going to disown you. Wow. That already kind of tells me that you don't actually love me. Unless I've done something horrible to you, then you probably should say, done, bye. But when they use it manipulatively, gotta watch, man, not to be pulled into that, because it's also a no-win if they say, I've known somebody quite narcissistic that said to their son, if you marry that particular girl, you're out of the family. Okay, let me think about that. So I marry her, I'm out of the family, I lose that, I lose mom, I lose friends, I lose siblings or whatever in the family. If I don't marry this person, I don't marry who I love, and I'm following yet again the orders of a psycho, a narcissist or whatever else they're suffering from. So that's just another example of a no-win situation. And there's one last thing I want to say in terms of dealing with this sort of thing. Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, I elected for your sake and mine to demonstrate that even the most outrageous assault, a person who has done absolutely no wrong and in fact did the exact opposite, loving, healing, support, all these wonderful miracles Jesus did, teaching love, preaching love, etc., living love, and he calls it an outrageous assault. I demonstrated that even under the condition of the most outrageous, undeserved assaults, that your opinions of me, your assaults on me, do not have power over me. He says that they do not matter. Even if the most outrageous assault came onto Jesus, he's like, means nothing. What's my reaction? Don't take it too seriously. Forgive them, they know not what they do. He was demonstrating that. And my point to that is, don't forget how powerful you are and that these people don't actually have power as they think they do, which would just destroy them to realize how not empowered they are. That's the only reason they're acting out the way they do. I'm narcissistic because I'm trying to compensate for something. So what's narcissism about? It's all the same, whether you're the narcissist or the person with a narcissist. Technically, they're the same. Now you're going, well, no, wait a minute. They're the bad guy. I'm the good guy. Well, no, wait. Both have forgotten who they are. One then lashes out as a narcissist to overcompensate. The other one crashes, forgetting the power that they have inside. Otherwise, you wouldn't let this person, who's obviously off their rocker, take control of your life like that. So that's what it's about. Both people have forgotten, So in countering narcissism, we just observe it. I would say one thing to do, guys, is, besides the things mentioned already, is observe it for yourself, because you might have some of these characteristics. But, observe that and see if there's bits of that in you and what you might be able to do about it. I know if you ask yourself, could I be narcissistic? Ask us a few simple questions like, am I okay apologizing? Am I even willing to ask if I'm a narcissist? Because a narcissist usually won't. Not always, but usually they won't. So if I'm willing to say, well, I wonder if I have any of those characteristics, it's kind of a nice, humble, open-minded thing, going on inside of you. That's probably a good sign. Do you use the word I a lot? And I don't just mean the word I. Like, I could sit here and say, I would like to talk to you guys today about narcissism. Oh, he's a narcissist because he said I. I would like some ice cream today. Oh, narcissist. No, that's exaggerated. I'm talking about when it's like nothing can be said without the conversation coming back to I or me. Everything's I or me. And you can ask yourself, if you do that, gosh, maybe I do kind of turn every conversation back to me or something related to me. You could also, in a pinch, you could ask friends. That's a tricky one, because then they're going to start noticing it and go, you are a narcissist because you just said I. So that's a tricky one. But you, if you needed to, you could ask and say, hey, I've heard about this thing, and I know some people that do this. Can I ask you an honest question? Do you think I do that? And And would you like some feedback? That way it kind of levels the playing field. And, would you like some feedback? And you could say, no, I've heard all about narcissists and how they talk about themselves, or da da da. And I really don't see that. I think we all say I and me once in a while, but it's not clinical. And they might say, oh, thank you. So you might have a pretty decent conversation. But I think that that's a way to go. But that's really in a pinch, because you also putting people in a position to answer you and hope that they'll answer honestly. And I don't know that everybody could answer honestly, especially if they think you really are a narcissist. Then they're going to be afraid to tell you the truth because of the rage that can come out of a narcissist. So we all have moments when we're self-absorbed. It just happens. Don't you can say something about my hairstyle, but don't ever touch my shiny car. It's perfect condition and it's an old classic, and that becomes my thing, but it's still me. Don't touch that car. Don't put a smudge on my car because it's mine. That can still be narcissistic, even though it's not me directly I'm talking about. What's mine is still an extension of me, and don't touch me. Don't smudge me. Don't do anything that would deter from me in any way. So as I'm starting to wrap up, I would say, just personally, my experience, what I do sometimes, I just try to make little micro adjustments consistently. I won't say constantly, because that might have a wrong connotation, but nice and consistently. I've written several books. In today's context, on codependence, boundaries, and those kinds of things. My relationship book, creating fulfilling relationships. And you can't have fulfilling relationships if you don't have healthy boundaries and deal with codependence and so on. But, when I've written books, sometimes the natural languaging is to say something like, you have to remember, work on yourself to, I'm just giving you an example, work on yourself to heal your relationships. But because I want to do my best to model healthiness, even though there was no ill intention there, I went back into my books, and I still do every so often, to watch for any seeming what you need to do is work on codependence, which is true. But I changed almost everything I've ever written to what we need to do, because we're all in this together. A narcissist won't be able to do that. But I'm just giving you an example of how I've even gone into the expense of many hundreds or thousands of dollars of re-editing books just to get a pronoun changed. It didn't have to, but it's consistent. It's a matter of consistency, but also because I've known friends and authors that have written books with lots of you, and seeing it, I'm like, wow, that's just so unhealthy. Not that we always have to mean it that way. Not that every time you say you, it's negative. It's just I saw it now and again in excess. So I thought, let's go with we. But not just because you can be abusive one way or abused one way. It's because we is actually more true. It feels right. That's just me. I mean, that's just the way it is. Maybe other people would say you didn't need to do that or whatever. It just seemed right. And I know that a lot of teachers, they'll write in their books, I, and let me tell you a story about me, and even some people, narcissists, are very tactful sometimes. Sometimes I've known people that consistently talk about themselves, but sometimes they'll actually shift and talk about their car or their child. And you realize every time we talk, they have to mention their child. That can be a passive-aggressive form of narcissism. I got to bring up that child. And it doesn't matter if you love the child or not. That's not the point. It's why you're actually using them. Look, I have a child, to bring attention to yourself again. Look, I have a new car. Look, did you see my new hairdo? Did you see my new outfit? Sometimes that's not unhealthy, but we should just be aware, if we're doing it, that it could be unhealthy. That's all I'm saying. And, just trying to clean up things that we might do if it comes across in a narcissistic kind of a fashion, a narcissistic style of communication. But my last thing I'm wanting to share is that think of, if we're going back to Greek mythology, think of being in a narcissistic relationship, being in one. Think of it as a metaphor for being, and don't laugh too hard, but a metaphor for being in hell. Okay, what a drag. Okay, so if I have a relationship with a narcissist, that means Michael's saying it's like being in hell. And you might go, oh, that's terrible. Or you might laugh and go, yeah, totally, it is like hell. But that's not where I'm ending it. How did you end up in hell? Because you usually don't end up in hell for no reason. Uh-oh. Michael's just turned the table back on each of us, right? So, how did I end up with a narcissist? How did I end up in hell? Oh, I guess the crime that locks you away in hell, it's a metaphor, okay, are things like low self-worth, excessive self-doubt, low self-worth, self-judgments. So if I have self-judgment, such as low self-worth, undeservability, I'm starting to scrunch up, I'm little. But if I have those judgments usually result in some sort of a jail sentence, let's say, if it's a legal judgment against you. So if I have judgments, I'm now going to end up in hell. So that means before I even met the narcissist and ended up in hell with him, I was already finding myself guilty of low self-worth, guilty of something, undeservability. Oh, I cheated on, my first husband, and I just feel shame for it. Oh, perfect. Now you're the wounded animal, that the predators will come after. And that's what happens. I hope this metaphor makes sense, because it's so deep to say, wow, how I must have thought or done something to get into hell, instead of just, yeah, man, narcissists are like being in hell. Yeah, but why are you in hell? Oh, now I turned it to, I've got to look at myself. I've got to look at where I have low self-worth. And the good news is, as you work on that, you'll be free. You won't attract a narcissist. You won't be as attractive to a narcissist. They won't go, look, I'm a shark and there's a bleeding victim in the water. Your theme song for your wedding won't be dun 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 dun, as your slow dance together and all that. So as we learn to heal and live a life that's more aligned with love and self-worth, we're creating an immunity to narcissism or whatever else, to all kinds of things that can happen to us in this world. So our cure comes from changing our consciousness, obviously, because everything outside is a reflection of consciousness. Heaven and hell are just reflections of consciousness. So I'm going to start moving from low self-worth to love and self-worth, not narcissistic self-worth, which is overinflated and grandiose, but rather, love and self-worth. God actually created me as a nice soul, not just saying it. Start acting like it. Start having healthier thoughts, words, and deeds. Start having healthier boundaries. And it will be unattractive. Literally, unhealthy people start to become repelled. And like the people that got hurt feelings from narcissists, sometimes because you're looking for a deeper love, they're going to just be mad and they're going to get angry and they might project on you. If that's going to bother you, then don't bother trying to wake up at all spiritually and worry about everybody else's feelings and to a fault. And then you end up in hell again. So that's fine. You have that, everybody's got that choice, but we don't have to. We can choose again, say, we're all in this together. Yes, I was mad, angry, hurt by that borderline partner, that psychopath partner, that bipolar partner, or whatever you call them, depressed, or whatever you thought somebody was. But why was I in that pit with them? I must have had something going on that kind of brought me that direction. So the solution, After naming all these characteristics and all these what to do's, the ultimate solution, remembering who we are. In grandiosity, it's, I don't remember who I am, so I'm going to make up a version who I am. Boom, look at me, I'm a king, I'm a queen, I deserve everything, you must do this and you must do that, and how dare you, sitting around with those constant declarations. No, it's not that. This is, I'm remembering who I am. There's nothing I need to do, meaning to impress anybody. Oh, I forgot to brush my hair today, and oh well, kind of laugh at it a little bit. No, I have two different colored socks on. It's not like, oh my God, what am I? You don't go into panic attacks. Because, like a song once said at the end, nothing really matters. Anyone can see. Nothing really matters. Nothing really matters to me. Bohemian Rhapsody, right? So it's like that. It's like, none of this really matters. It's really small stuff that some people that are so missing themselves, forgetting who they are, they blow out of proportion to create drama, to make everybody then jump into positions that they give them because they know better on how to fix something. And instead it's like, no, let's chill. I'm not going to hold any ill will. Please don't hold ill will. It's hard not to if somebody's really harmed you with their personality disorders or their behaviors in some way. I don't have to hold any ill will. I kind of see, I was sort of seeing myself as their victim at one time, their recipient of whatever, and I get it now. And we played a part. The bottom line is, you can just say, even if you want to say this at first with a little bit of attitude, because you might have to start with that before you can come to total peace, but you can just say, oh, I do believe they were mean. I do believe they were kind of screwed, and they were kind of rude and took advantage. They did all that. Go ahead and make your list and blurt it out. And you can say, and it wasn't nice of them. It was selfish. Get that all out. But just try to get yourself to at least say this. But I do know this. If I were completely aware of who I am and in my healthiest state of mind, I would not have accepted that in my life. I would have done something about it, or done something sooner. If nothing else, you can state that, because that means you're at least acknowledging a part you played and that you can make different choices. That's a good, healthy thing to do. And then at some point, you'll be able to say even more, which is the second half of that, which is, and it also means that they must not have known who they really are for them to have behaved the way they did. And that's pretty cool. Because when you do that, you realize, oh my God, the statement, forgive them, they know not what they do, was not stated by a nice guy to bad people. It is stated to all people, including ourselves, that when we're off, we allow things that are off, and we act a bit off. Whichever role I played in this incident, it only came from me not knowing who I am, and it's not necessary. So, like A Course in Miracles is saying, the only reason a person can become narcissistic is to compensate and manufacture a false, grandiose self to make up for how little you feel. Now, I'm not telling you one of those lines about, oh, just feel sorry for them. You're like, really? Because they beat me up verbally every day. I'm saying, know it in here. Know it in here, and just go, this is a game. Meaning, this person, they shout, they shame. Wow, and I can see through it. And you can say, oh, poor thing, they might have been hurt, whatever, this or another life. But also you're also in this. So we have to say, this has to end. And if they were healthy or I were healthy, we wouldn't be doing this. If both of us are healthy, clearly we wouldn't be doing this. But if one of us is, one of us, the other wouldn't be here right now experiencing this. So I'm going to recommend that they consider healthiness. They'll take that advice or they won't. Not my business. But I should insist on my healthiness. I should insist on me going in that direction. And that's what you need to be aware of. So I hope this has made good sense. I pray that this can alleviate confusion around the topic. I pray that it could make a huge difference in your life by just saying, wow, I get it now. I play a part and do your part to heal. Or that you get an insight as to the characteristics. So you go, okay, now I know a little more clearly what I'm dealing with in this person or that person. So it's just healthy and helpful on one level or another to have heard this, is my prayer anyway. And that my examples, like I said, about how I write articles or whatever else, I've even gone back, and I don't need you all to tell me, Michael, you missed on page 12 of the certain book you said I don't need that. Thank you. But it would be a bit too much. But I have gone back to articles and things and changed that when I can. And that's because it's like a healer's way of cleaning things up. First, checking myself to make sure there's none of that there for me, preaching, or let me tell you all personal stories. My books don't include they don't include personal stories. And I've written books on healing. I could have said, I healed from this, I did this. I written books on sacred sexuality. I could have said, and I experienced this, and I don't. Once I get out of the preface of the book, when I'm introducing the book, I might say, I want to thank so-and-so because this was a big part of my life that helped me come to this topic in a book. That's where I'll mention it. When I break out of that part of the book and I hit the introduction, we're flying, we're soaring. I don't do that. I don't have personal stories anymore in my books. That's never been. I never did write that stuff because I always felt this is for the folks there. When I share and when I talk and teach, I'll make personal references here and there, but I love self-observation to make sure I'm clear and clean and not doing the very things that I'm talking about as much as possible. And you might want to do that. Remember, self-observation can keep you a bit cleaner around whether or not you yourself have traits of narcissism, okay?